What up, guys? This is a film history episode with me, Nestor Serrano, and Diego Olivares. We're going to be dealing with Paul Thomas Anderson and his body of work, starting from Hard 8 and all the way to Inherent Vice. So, if you guys enjoy this episode or this channel, please subscribe and have a good time.
That's how much we miss Diego, our film historian, our film, not protege, maybe protege, our film librarian, our film expert.
Hello.
Say hello to the guys. I'm Nestor.
I'm Diego. Juan.
And we have another low-key episode for you guys. On the last podcast, we talked about big directors and their humble beginnings making short films. And a director we spent a lot of time talking about was Paul Thomas Anderson, which led for me and Diego to talk, hey, maybe Paul Thomas Anderson should have his own show. And that's what we did. We're going to kind of go through his not humble beginnings, but his beginnings to where he's at now and everything in between, all the great, wonderful work he's done. I don't know. He's a guy from the Valley with a background of family in the business. So, you know, he had a leg up. And I think that's why his early work is so good, is because he's just been around business and the industry for so long that I feel like that's what he was born to do, is to be a film director.
Like, he's actually seen it. Sorry about that. He's actually seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
Well, going to his beginnings, yeah, he was born in the Valley. He was born in Studio City, California. His father was Ernie Anderson, who was a well-known voiceover artist. He did a lot of voiceover work for a lot of commercials and shows. Like, he would do voiceover work for The Love Boat, I think.
Wow.
And he was known in his early days as a character named Goulardi, who was like this sort of horror, who hosted all these horror, like B-movie horror shows in Cleveland.
Right. I mean,
and Goulardi is actually the name of Paul Thomas Anderson's current production company.
I think people don't know. I mean, if you're a young guy, but back in the day, the way network TV would do, they'd have a host hosting B movies with low budget horror flicks. So they'd have a guy kind of presenting it, telling you the actors are going to be in it, and a little bit of the history of, or just like, hey, this is the movie we're showing. So and so is in this movie, and he'd kind of play a little character. And the character he was Goulardi.
Yeah, Goulardi is like a vampire.
And it was kind of he was kind of a folklore, like, he was just known around those parts for that local TV.
So it's like those hosts of TV shows.
Yeah,
He was presenting the movies.
Yeah, like kind of like what's her face?
Vampira.
Elvira
and Vampira.
Vampira, the same, like something like that.
And what's funny about this, that in those shows that he hosts, he would do these weird things, and one of his phrases was "stay sick," which is actually referenced in Magnolia, one of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies.
Right.
And he even blew up a frog on TV for Firecracker. You get the frog, which is used in Magnolia, of course, in the climax, and then the firecracker used in the climax of Boogie Nights. So little in references of his dad's show he would put into his movies, which I thought was pretty charming.
Not only that, I think his dad was kind of a character. And if you want to hear a very detailed podcast from the man himself, you could listen to a great podcast on WTF with Mark Maron and Paul Thomas Anderson himself. One of the stories he told about his father that I found fascinating is how funny the man was, and how like he had a friend over one night, and they were really toasty, I would say. You know, they were drinking, they were partaking. And he superimposed himself into his ID as a ghost man. So he took a photo with a Polaroid with the whole, you know, with the ghost outfit.
Oh, wow.
Cut that picture out, put it in his ID, and then they're like, yo, we need to get pulled over. So when we hand it to the cop, he'll he pulled over a ghost man because he thought it was fucking hilarious. You know.
Wow.
Oh man.
So they put their little picture on the ID, and drunk as fuck, they go and drive around the valley until a cop pulls him over, and his friend's dressed like a ghost. His dad's in the passenger seat. They're fucking dying because it's like it's on some movie shit. Like, what cop pulls a guy over dressed as a ghost, and like, what is he gonna say? Obviously, he told them, "Hey, you guys probably had enough to drink. You guys probably should go home." Mm-hmm. And I just thought that, like, dude, his dad was hilarious.
Yeah, that takes some balls, man.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious. I think we talked about this. Coffee and cigarettes is for short.
Well, actually, we talk about coffee and cigarettes, but I want to backtrack it a little bit because he actually, there's another, if anybody interested in learning more about Paul Thomas Anderson, there's this great Esquire article that came out, I think in 2008, because I remember reading the article.
Right.
And it details a lot about Anderson's early life, his childhood, growing up in the Valley, that he had interest in cinema from a very young age, actually. And he watched all these great movies from all these great directors. He would listen to Laserdisc commentary back when Laserdisc was a thing.
Yeah, he was fascinated by the industry.
By cinema. And it wasn't just like he loved movies. Like, he loved movies. You know, he was a massive fan of Kubrick, of Scorsese, of Altman, Jonathan Demme, David Mamet, all these like great writer-directors.
Right.
And you could tell this guy had just such great taste in movies, and him and his friends in high school would be making these, very like kind of like amateur short films just for fun and whatnot. Uh-huh. And he said like he made that stuff for practice just to get all this stuff out, that kind of regular, like I want to make a little slasher movie, or I want to make.
It's that. He's starting out those movies.
Yeah, and his first kind of real short film, or the one that he said he put real effort into, was actually in 1988, and it's called The Dirk Diggler Story, which became the prototype for Boogie Nights. The movie started out in the article, they talked a bit about it. It started out as a school assignment for his class, kind of like a senior project.
Right.
And he was interested in pornography. At a young age.
If you know anything about the Valley, it's kind of...
It's the porn capital of the world. And it's really the setting of a lot of his movies, too. The
Valley?
The Valley. It's essentially, it's to him like what New York is to Scorsese or Woody Allen or Spike Lee, or Jersey is to Kevin Smith.
I mean, and he knows that, like he says, like as a kid, he'd see the sets, he'd see the girls coming in and out, and
he would see these
some
houses,
shady characters,
and you see these houses with expensive cars parked in the front,
and blacked out windows,
and whatnot.
And he knows.
So he knew about that. He had actually researched a lot about John Holmes.
Right.
And he even talked about that in that podcast, about researching the John Holmes stuff, researching about how he started. There was a documentary called Exhausted that talked about Holmes' career, also about the infamous Wonderland murders, which they reference in Boogie Nights, actually.
Right.
And he made this short film, and he made it in the style of a mockumentary because Spinal Tap was kind of like the big thing at the time.
Yeah.
And he thought, let's do a movie about this kind of the typical rise and fall story. Let's meet this young guy. He becomes a star in the porno business, and then drugs and ego gets in the way.
Kind of
behind
behind the
scenes. It's almost like it precurses each Hollywood story when you think about it.
Okay.
And even Boogie Nights itself kind of has that element of like
rise and fall.
The rise and fall, like which he actually said were based off of true stuff that happened, not just in the porno industry, but also even in just legitimate Hollywood itself.
Just the entertainment business.
The entertainment business, these people who just kind of start up, and just like the world is opening up to you. You're like, oh my god, and then you do.
Well, when you're the shit, and then you're shit.
Yeah, it's the rise and fall.
It's the rise and fall, which people would say is a cliche story, but it's actually a very true story that's still happening today. So Dirk Diggler was the one that first started that. It was the precursor to Boogie Nights. I actually saw the short film. I've seen it a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
The actual short?
The actual short. Someone posted it online. It was shot, I think, on VHS, and his dad had lent him a Steadicam.
He let him borrow some equipment, yeah.
He shot it in a motel somewhere in Universal Studios, I think, or in Universal City. He had cast one of his dad's friends, an actor by the name of Bob Ridgely, who was like a Mel Brooks regular, to play the part that Burt Reynolds played in the movie. In fact, Bob Ridgely played a colonel in Boogie Nights.
Right.
and just some school friends to play the other characters. And I even think the actor who played Dirk Diggler pops out in Boogie Nights and whatnot at one point. But he shot the short on VHS, and that kind of was. It is interesting to know that he was like 17 years old when he made that short film, and that he had nucleus of this film in his head, even back then.
But I mean, that ends up being in some of it an influence for his later work. But the movie that really started his career, was Coffee and Cigarettes.
Cigarettes and Coffee.
Cigarettes and Coffee. I always say that. Yeah, that's the Jim Jarmusch movie.
Coffee and Cigarettes is
Jim Jarmusch. It's a Jim Jarmusch movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we'll probably do an episode about Jim Jarmusch in the future.
Right.
But no, what happened was after Dirk Diggler story, he graduated and he worked on as a production assistant on a lot of these sets, independent films.
You know what? There's actually on YouTube, there's him as a PA
as a young
going around, just kind of doing a little documentary about people behind the scenes. Which is really interesting.
It is really interesting that you see this guy and he's interviewing all these people, and yet none of the people who is being interviewed by him ever realize this guy's going to be a big time filmmaker, that he's going to be out there, and not just some I made as a director. As a director, who's still talked about and analyzed to this day. Yeah, but
it was considered one of the greats.
Yeah, it was he was making
contemporary,
and it was cool because he just he got to learn about the on-set filmmaking stuff. He got to kind of see how it was done, and while making these films, one of the film sets he was on, he got to meet Philip Baker Hall, who was an actor he had admired. And now this stuff we probably covered in the short films, so if we re-explain anything we said about that, we apologize. But he met Philip. It's crucial to the story,
right?
But he met Philip Baker Hall on the set of one of these not short films, but this feature TV movie, and had admired Hall for years. And when Hall asked him, what do you want to do for life? Anderson said, I want to be a filmmaker. I want to make movies. In fact, I wrote this 23-page screenplay of a short film I want to do, and I want you to play one of the leads. And that became, of course, Cigarettes and Coffee. Now, the story of Cigarettes and Coffee is essentially like how Dirk Diggler was a precursor to Boogie Nights. Cigarettes and Coffee was a precursor to both Hard A, his first feature, and to some extent Magnolia, his third feature.
Right.
It evolves these 5 characters whose lives interconnect while they're at this diner, and there's a connection between all of them, part of which is from a $20 bill, which obviously the connection aspect and the whole theme of the movie is very much similar to Magnolia, but the whole noir dark side of Vegas or Reno is a big part of Hard A, his first feature film.
I like how in Cigarettes and Coffee, this guy believes in bad luck, bad energy, and that pertaining to the $20 bill, and I think that's something he carries throughout all his movies, superstition and
just chance,
chance,
random things that happen. Which is in all his movies,
yeah.
I mean, that's a big theme of his movies. These things that happen, these weird, strange things that happen in the world, but they just do. And the idea of how people's lives intersect is a big element of all his movies too. These characters who just lives cross paths and whatnot.
So he gets Philip Baker Hall, who becomes one of his leading actors,
one of his main actors, and he cast him in a lot of his '90s work actually, which is interesting. And he gets a few other actors based off his connections from being a production assistant, and he funded the movie. It cost about $20,000 to make. Part of it was funded from money he had saved from. He had actually a little interesting story which I want to explain. He had actually gone. He did not go to film school, but he did do 2 days at New York University. And the story goes is that while at New York University, a screenwriting teacher, opened the class. This is what Anderson said. There's a video of him talking about it somewhere on YouTube. But Anderson said that while he was at the screenwriting class, a teacher at one point said, okay, if anybody's here to write Terminator 2, please get out of here. We're not going to write those kind of movies. We're here to write serious movies. And Anderson was like, well, wait, that's a bad way to start. Like, what if somebody here wants to write a film like Terminator 2?
Well, I mean, because NYU is based out of New York, which is a big theater.
It's more theater-driven.
And, then, they want to take things serious.
More art house.
And it's not about, like, we're not really about commercializing art.
Right.
Which is bullshit because that's all Hollywood really is.
Exactly. And then he was getting this feeling of, like, I don't want to be here if they're going to talk shit about great movies. Right. He was a fan of Terminator 2. Right. Who isn't?
Exactly.
And before he left, he wanted to do a test. He thought, I'm going to do a little test. I remember they wanted them to do their first assignment where they write a single page.
Right.
And turn that in. The single page has to be like a character, like doing something with action.
Uh-huh.
And he took a page from Mamet's script, Hoffa, which Danny DeVito later directed.
Right.
He turned that in as his own, and it gave him a C+.
Yeah, if David Mamet can't get you an A,
then you're just like, fuck this.
Yeah, you're not gonna pass that class.
It's like, it's just crazy. One of the greatest writers in the world, and they're like C+.
Yeah,
and it's just like, come on, really? And the scene Anderson described,
and he drops out. I mean, eventually he drops out
after 2 days because he thought, if I can drop out for a certain amount of time, I can get my money back.
And he used that money
partially to survive, and also to put into the funding of cigarettes and coffee. And the other ways he got money was from friends and his girlfriend's credit card. And he just got 20 grand scraped together, and he just made this movie, which essentially it feels like what's great about the movie is that it establishes his style and themes real early on, but it also, I felt, was a great calling card.
Yeah.
Like a great, we talked about earlier how some filmmakers, when you struggle trying to make your first feature, you decide to use your resources to make a short film instead.
Right. I think we covered a lot of this on the last podcast.
Yeah,
we talked extensively about it because Cigarettes and Coffee, it goes and I think it wins the Sundance Short Film Award or the Writing Award.
It went to the Sundance Film Festival, and it got some acclaim there in the short film area, and they liked him a lot. That at one point they invite him to the Sundance Workshop, which is a program up there where young filmmakers who are struggling to get in could have their screenplays. You get your screenplays critiqued by professional people. You get some actors up there. You get to shoot some scenes as practice. You kind of get some idea of and you get some advice from professionals. Tarantino went through it. I think Cary Fukunaga went through it. The guy who directed True Detective.
I think the guy that directed Whiplash, he submitted
something there. Yeah, and it got developed.
So
it's a great place for a lot of young filmmakers to get their stuff developed. And Anderson had his take on his first feature, which was called Signy, developed there because he had the idea of let's create this as a feature. While he had presented Cigarettes and Coffee up at Sundance, a producer had approached him and said, I want to fund your movie. I want to fund a feature version of this film.
Yeah.
And that became Sydney, which Anderson describes. He wrote the first draft of that script in 2 weeks. It was very...
Like in his dad's...
living with his dad, I think.
I think it was his dad's cabin.
Yeah,
he went and just banged it out.
He just wrote it really fast.
Yeah.
He said it's probably one of the fastest he ever written a script because he's had the concept in his head. So now we're going to his feature.
And he lived in Reno for a long time.
Yeah, we're going to his feature work. So the plot of Sydney, which was later called Hard Eight, is a gambler played by Philip Baker Hall who meets a younger gambler played by John C. Reilly as they both strike up this father-son relationship.
Yeah.
And how that gets interfere when two other characters come in, a waitress played by Gwyneth Paltrow and a kind of shady bad guy gangster type played by Sam Jackson.
How good of an eye does fucking Paul Thomas Anderson
when he gets actors?
He gets Philip Baker Hall, John C. Reilly, and
Samuel
Jackson and Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, Sam Jackson was just hot off of Pulp Fiction,
right?
Too. And in fact, it was because Sam Jackson was coming off of Pulp Fiction is the reason why that film got financed.
Right.
And then he had Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman for a scene.
Yeah, but he still got him.
But
though.
yeah, I mean, it's something.
And it was a really good scene.
Yeah, he sees him and he has an eye for talent, or or his casting agent has such an eye for talent.
But I think a lot of the actors he writes the roles for too, because he mentions in his
he's
commentaries
like,
that
I
he
wrote that role specifically
for those
him.
actors, so he goes after them, and he always makes really great corrections.
I mean, and the reason he got that movie too, it was like it was right at the boiling point when all these indie directors were winning awards and making low budget movies that would end up doing great in the box office.
Yeah.
You know, Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction helped set the stage for that.
Yeah.
And the the company that did Hard Eight Sydney was called Reicher Entertainment, which they're basically known for doing television work. They did stuff like Baywatch and
but they wanted to break into
feature filmmaking. But you picture Reicher Entertainment and Paul Thomas Anderson, not a great mix because the production.
Well,
of
I mean,
film,
it was them trying to break into the industry,
and
something they don't know anything about, with a young rookie director. So, just as they wanted to be as hands-on as possible,
right,
and they wanted to cut a movie the certain way. They wanted to, have.
But also,
actors.
he had a particular idea of what the film
what
was,
he wanted,
and
right?
This is what he wanted. Wasn't what they wanted.
Yeah.
From what it sounds like, I think what he wanted was to do
So
this character study.
They end up just not scrapping the movie, but.
Well, what happened, the story goes, is that Anderson started filming sometime in early 95, so he was like 24 at this point.
Yeah.
And they shot for 30 days. It was a very low-budget movie. I think it was between $8. I don't know what the budget. I think it was $2 million. Maybe.
Yeah, it wasn't much.
It
was
much.
modest.
It was a pretty nice budget for what he was going to do.
Right.
Which was a very small movie about these 4 characters.
Right.
And he shot it up at Reno. And he just got into arguments with the producer of the project.
I mean, they ended up clashing.
Yeah, there was a lot of clashing involved.
Well, it's just that the producers wanted to stronghold him and have them do what their vision of the movie was, instead of having him do what he was brought in for and having him do his own vision.
And it was funny too. I think also maybe in their eyes they just look at like he's 24 years old at this point.
He's
a kid. They're like are they gonna listen to this kid? But then again, he's a director and he wrote the screenplay for this movie.
Yeah, I mean, who knows the work better than the writer?
Exactly. And the fact that he even said in that podcast you were talking about that the reason he came on as director was because he wrote the screenplay. So it's like, hey, I wrote the screenplay. I should be the one directing it because I know what the movie's about.
I know what it's about.
And that they shot the movie, and it entered this long period of post-production. And that's when Reicher really started to interfere, and they took the movie. At one point, I think Anderson did a 2.5-hour cut, and
they didn't like
it. And Anderson said it was because they just didn't have enough time to really, condense it down. They took the movie away from him. They locked him out of the editing room.
Yeah, they kicked him out of his own project.
It just kind of feels it's just weird. I mean, you hear stories about filmmakers who are assigned a project and then something goes wrong.
Today.
But to work on a project that you created, that's your vision, and then to have people say you can't do that, that's
but once you start using other people's money, that tends to happen.
Right.
But I think what ended up happening is that they end up testing their cut. And it didn't test.
It's
well
not
at
a great.
all.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't a great
Nobody
cut because they wanted to do it more like a kind of noir thriller, where Anderson wasn't interested in that. He wanted to do it more as like a character study.
He wanted to do what he wrote.
Yeah, as a character study.
It seems like the studio wanted Pulp Fiction.
I think it.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, maybe something
like
that.
They wanted something like that.
It's like a noir thriller, right? That's what they're.
They wanted something.
I mean, they wanted what was hot at the time.
Yeah, so they wanted a Tarantino type
movie. Yeah,
like a kind of slick pace thriller, but
like
Anderson wasn't doing that.
I mean, then like Swingers meets Pulp Fiction meets,
Yeah, they wanted that. They wanted what the indie films were doing then.
Yeah, but that's not what he was interested in doing.
He was interested in doing his own thing. Like
he had his own vision.
I mean, even for somebody that young, I was impressed if he had a vision and knew exactly what he wanted to do. But just they didn't share that vision, and there was just a lot of fights.
And I think we talked about this, but he ends up taking the Boogie Nights check, and with that check, he ends up finishing the movie the way he wants to do it.
And he gets his screened at Cannes Film Festival, which gives him a lot of attention. In fact, he actually took the print and sent it to Khan without the studio's permission.
Without letting them know.
Did he ever change the name back to Sydney or no?
No, what happened was they decided to go with his take.
They let him keep his cut, but one of
They kept the title.
They said we got to call it Hard
Hard
8.
Eight.
And if you don't call it Hard 8, we're going to release our version called Hard 8. And Anderson has said, okay.
Is it called Hard 8 because of Philip Seymour Hoffman's scene?
It probably is.
It's because that's what makes the old man. Like, he's a bold dude.
Uh-huh.
But his name's Sydney. I mean, the whole movie's about
Sydney. That's why it's called Sydney. But it was called Hard 8 partly because it'd be like one of those things you find on Showtime, like Hard Justice. Like, it had a kind of noir title towards it or something to sound a little...
It has the word hard in it.
Yeah.
And it's like noir, and they're probably wanting like some hard-boiled type characters.
Right. Yeah.
That's
well, the
what
thing about
going for.
Philip Seymour Hoffman, his character, he's known, like, he's hit it, but also lost a lot. Mm-hmm. His move while gambling is that he bets hard on the Hard 8 craps. Yeah. And that's his move. So that's like it defines the character. But it's not. It's kind of a throwaway line. They just kind of like the name.
There's like the name of that.
I mean, it's a good name for a gambling movie. It's Hard 8. That's a good name for.
Like, let me ask you guys a question.
But it's not really about a gambling movie.
Which name? Which title do you guys like better, Sydney or Hard 8?
I think Sydney is also too confusing.
I heard one of the reasons they changed it too is that they thought the studio thought that people.
Movie?
Yeah, it's about Australia. Honestly, it's like I kind of like Hard 8.
I
kind of like the title.
I like Hard 8 if it's an actual gambling movie, but if the movie's about to do, then I think I could see where Sydney is the name of the movie.
Right.
But that experience...
But Hard 8 is a better title.
I heard Anderson said okay to the title because he was just tired at the end. Because at the end of this like long fight with the studio over his movie, he just wanted it to be done.
I think we covered this.
Yeah, and
he ends up camping out inside those studios the studios people's houses.
And all while this is going on, this is when he shot Boogie Nights.
What happened was while he was making Sydney, and as Sydney was kind of going crazy and he was stressed out, obviously he needed something to, and I think anybody who's a filmmaker does this, they work on another project just to get the kind of...
So he had two projects going simultaneously?
Yeah, so not simultaneously. One was falling apart, so he was slowly building a new project to kind of get...
So while Hard 8 or whatever Sydney is going through post-production...
It was like around filming during...
does Jiggler?
I think during the filming is when he started writing Boogie Nights. He had written Boogie Nights prior to...
No, but I'm saying like when he actually shoots it and stuff.
No, that's much later.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, like the story goes on the production of Boogie Nights is that he wrote a script of Boogie Nights before he even made Hard 8. Like, he wrote it as a 300-page screenplay, and it was in the mock documentary style of the short film, the Dirk Diggler story.
Mm-hmm. But then a lot of mockumentaries started coming
and
out.
that became like a standard at that point, and he just thought, let me just do it as a straight narrative.
Spinal Tap, he kind of was like, you know what, the mockumentary's kind of dead, it's played out, so he rewrites Boogie Nights to kind of do what he wants to do. Well, just kind of like take away the mockumentary aspect of it and make it more of I would say like the rise and fall, like this odyssey of a man going through the industry.
Like a straight narrative, basically, is what he did with it. I mean, he was coming off of, he was going through the hell of Hard 8. He just thought, I'm going to write a movie about
what he knows, because I mean, the Valley. It's about the Valley. It's about the rise and fall of the entertainment industry. It's about the film versus digital. I mean, it's about the industry.
Yeah, film versus VHS. Actually,
VHS, exactly. Yeah, but also, I mean, the way movies are being made, the way movies are being financed.
I guess in a weird way,
it's about the industry.
Everything he was experiencing on Hard 8 was kind of bleeding into Boogie Nights when you really think about it.
Because I remember. What's the chief's name? The guy
Colonel.
The Colonel. There you go. He's telling like, we don't make porn, man. We make films. We shoot it on film. That's Burt Reynolds' character says that because it's the idea of like they want to be these artists, and the idea is that if you shoot on film, you're considered an artist. But then when VHS comes into the equation, it's just trashy. It's like, I don't want to, I don't want to see the story. I want to go to the sex scenes. You want to go to the money shots and whatnot. Yeah, you skim through them.
But it's a real kind of like look at an era of a life. Like look at starts off in the 70s and goes into the kind of
beautiful film, by the way,
heights of the 70s and into the kind of
so you think he's still on an upswing at this point in his career?
What do you mean?
He's saying he's still like an upswing at this point in his career as a director.
Probably.
I don't even know if he's fell off yet.
Oh no, I don't.
No, that's what I'm asking. Like,
wait, can you rephrase?
like, do you think he's still growing as a director? Like, he's getting better
for him being his
I
sophomore movie.
I think he was getting better. Like, but yeah, he was getting better.
For being his sophomore movie, his second feature, it's a great fucking movie.
It's an amazing film. I mean, that's the movie that's his breakthrough essentially. Like Hard 8. What happens to Hard 8 is that it comes and they didn't really promote it too well. They put it into very few theaters. It just comes and goes. But people saw it and they thought, well, this guy has.
But as a film, you could tell like he has. Some
there's
talent.
as a filmmaker, it's not some trashy movie. There's a guy here who's legitimately talented. And eventually, it got the script for Boogie Nights got to New Line Cinema, and New Line at this point they were trying to ride that wave of independent filmmaking. Like, we don't want to just be, because they're just known as the guys who made all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, made kind of commercial movies, but they wanted to show
West was funding all that.
Yeah, they wanted to show it was known as the house that Freddy built, because Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, was like their massive. That was a movie that made them what they are today, and I guess they wanted to show, hey, we can do art house films. We could do like
we could compete with these other.
We could compete with Miramax, who was the big ones at the time.
Yeah,
because Miramax was them.
And unlike the other studio, this studio is completely friendly. They go above and beyond to help his vision, to help him get what he needs.
I wouldn't say they were completely friendly, but they were more supportive. They were more supportive than.
I mean, he's not like fighting with them.
They trust the directors more.
One of the executives. Like, there's a book called Rebels on the Backlot, and in that book it details a lot about Paul Thomas Anderson and about the making of Boogie Nights.
Right.
And one of the executives, a guy by the name of Mike DeLuca, who's now a producer, which he was the one that was pushing for Anderson to come to New Line and had liked the script for Boogie Nights and was like backing and said, I want to make this movie. I think this guy has potential, and talked about films of the 70s, like, stuff that, 70s movies. Like, you look at the opening of Boogie Nights, it's loosely inspired by two classic films, Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Touch of Evil.
Right.
And those are the inspirations for Boogie Nights?
Those are the inspirations for the opening
for that
scene.
scene.
Oh, for the opening
scene. It starts out in, you see a black screen, you see you hear a noise, and then it just pops to the title Boogie Nights. Like Close Encounters, you hear this black noise, you hear this strange sound, and it just pops right into the movie. And then it in the Boogie Nights, it opens with that really amazing tracking shot, all done in one long take. It's Touch of Evil. It's like the opening of Touch of Evil, where the camera is just panning and tracking the
right. It's like an homage. It's a homage to those movies.
And even the ending of Boogie Nights, you can say, is a homage to Raging Bull.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of his inspirations come from like
these old classic
movies.
Great movies. It's like legitimately great movies.
Comes from, I mean, what we said. He was just such a
film fan
and fanatic, and stuff he watched. And I feel like a lot of that stuff carried to a lot of his movies.
Yeah, these like homages.
But the
and
thing
whatnot.
like the blend of drama, humor, suspense. I mean, there's so much of that in that movie.
Oh yeah,
and for such a young guy, I mean, he couldn't have been 27, 26.
I think he was 26 when he was making that movie, and he was 27 when it came out. So he's pretty young.
He's young.
So the masterful part was that he understood the human condition.
Yeah, and the fact that he understood human psychology and the human condition. Because a lot of these characters, a lot of these characters in his movies are very. They're as far away from the classic Hollywood characters you can get.
Like, they don't feel like you're just watching archetypes on the.
Yeah, they don't feel like archetypes.
They feel like real people.
They feel. He probably writes, in my opinion,
the
most realistic characters you can see in a movie.
I can't think of a character that I watched from his movies that I don't think it's a real person. Like, you stop seeing those character actors and you start seeing these people,
these characters, and you feel like he has a care for these characters. Like, he doesn't hate them. He doesn't, like, there's certain directors who create characters just for the sake of, like, I'm going to show you, and particularly in that era of the 90s when there were a lot of these independent films, and a lot of these characters are kind of shown as like, oh, we're just going to have them go through hell.
John C. Reilly's character and Marky Mark's character, they come off as such good friends. There's real chemistry there.
You sense a real friendship there. Or even the relationship between Marky Mark's character and Burt Reynolds is kind of almost like father-son relationship.
And the mother with Julianne Moore to Marky Mark. They're a real family, and it feels real.
But what's interesting, too, is that not only does he humanizes them, but he's not afraid to show that they have a dark side to them.
And they're bad. Like,
and
they do bad shit.
They do bad things. They're not these super nice people. They're characters who are you can relate to and you get them, but they do. And I think maybe part of the reason you can relate to them is that they do make awful decisions. Like
that's part of the human condition is good and bad.
That fucking scene with John Molina. Alfred Molina, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm going. And the little Asian boy throwing
the firecrackers. And then you hear Sister Christian playing in the background. It's such a operatic.
Fucking great scene. And it's so tense.
It's probably the moment of the film where you realize we've gone to hell. Like the film, I mean, Boogie Nights, for anybody who hasn't seen it, and for anybody who hasn't seen it, shame on you. Boogie Nights, Boogie Nights, the story is about the rise and fall of a porn star played by Mark Wahlberg and the people around him, which includes this aging porn director played by Burt Reynolds, a porn actress played by Julianne Moore, and all these other people on the cast and crew as they go from 1977 to 1984, and is an examination of the golden era of pornography. This is post Deep Throat. So this is when porn was becoming legit. You know, when people could go into theaters and watch these porno films and whatnot. And when the movie's kind of divided into two separate halves. Like the first half is this like colorful, you know, this flamboyant look of the 70s of this gigantic party that keeps on playing.
Don Johnson.
And then by the ending, by the second half, it turns into this kind of crazy dark nightmare and whatnot.
Right.
And I just like how he just divides it too. Like, you know, the first half is very flamboyant and the second half is like raw and realistic. Like one of the best scenes of that movie is this sequence where you see the characters. There's a sequence in the limo. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
Where it's Burt Reynolds and Heather Graham, and they get that one guy who knew her, and you intercut
like
that
he would
with
make fun of her in school.
Yeah, and you intercut that with Marky Mark's character and the guy in the car.
Now he has to give out handjobs to make.
Yeah, and there's like an eruption of violence, and then you go to the scene with Don Cheadle in the donut shop, and this freak accident with the robbery happens. It's such a kind of weird, crazy,
but
insane
I mean, like
moment.
we were talking about, like how he just chance and happenstance.
Yeah.
And the weird things that happen in the world, like you could roll a dice and you could hit, like either Marky Mark's character, he gets jumped by gay bashers.
Yeah.
The other guy, they assault some guy because he talks down to them.
Yeah, and then
the other guy gets the money that he needed.
Robbery that goes wrong
because he's been trying to get a loan the whole time to go legit and start a business, and he finally is able to get the money because of this thing that went awry.
What's interesting is that in the case of Hard Eight, it had a feeling of, I mentioned Anderson being a massive film fan. In the case of Hard Eight, it felt like it was made by, you know, it had a David Mamet feel about it.
Right.
Now, in Boogie Nights, I feel more Scorsese in that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, you feel Goodfellas.
Yeah,
in
for
particular,
for sure.
Like the kind of that flamboyant style, and it has a Scorsese element with the rise and fall, which is in all his movies.
Yeah, honestly, yes.
Like I think that's like his most inspired by that.
And
but what's interesting though is that it's not a ripoff. It's more like it's his
not at all.
movie. Just using Scorsese as inspiration, or the way he'll use Robert Altman as inspiration on his next project.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean that movie's great. You were talking about the soundtrack. The soundtrack's amazing.
It's one of the best soundtracks.
It really is. So what happened with the case of Boogie Nights is that it was filmed in '96, went into editing for a full year till like I think October '97.
It's a long movie,
and part of it was because of the ratings board. They had a battle with the ratings board.
Yeah, it's a movie about porn.
Yeah, it's a movie about pornography.
It's already you're gonna have fights.
It got rated NC-17, and they had to recut it many times and whatnot. They did test screenings of the film. They actually did the New Line did at one point cut a version of their own.
Yeah.
Which didn't test well, and eventually they went with Anderson's version.
Yeah.
Thankfully. And what happened was that a lot of people, when the movie was coming out, I actually remember seeing a trailer of the film on VHS one time.
Me too.
When I was like, I think 6 years old. And I thought it was a very
It was such a colorful...
It was a very interesting, colorful movie, and I thought it was like a sort of weird comedy, a dramedy, like a movie that makes comedy and drama.
I would go to Tower Records and... Not once, but it was always at the same spot.
Yeah.
And I would always just hold it and look at it and stare at it and read the stuff in the back and read the songs.
Yeah.
But I never buy it. It always just called to my attention. Not till I was old enough. I'm like, that's the one movie, and I have to watch it. And I would watch it, and I've watched it, I'd say, like,
Multiple
close
times.
to, like, 50, 60, 70 times.
I think that was the second of his films that I saw.
All right.
Well, I mean, like the first one I saw was Magnolia, but the second was
Which I
Boogie
think
Nights.
we should
which
get to.
we'll
I
get
think
to.
Magnolia.
We'll get to Magnolia in a second. Is the next one, but I just want to talk about what happened when Boogie Nights came out, though. So the movie came out in '97. You know, it made its money back, but it got a lot of great critical praise. People were like, "Wow, this guy is a wonderkind filmmaker."
Yeah,
and
he's so young. And
he's young and making this movie that's like you expect somebody in their 30s or 40s to be making.
Yeah.
But here's this kid who's making it, and everybody's like, "Whoa!" And they were saying he's like the next Tarantino. He was nominated. Boogie Nights didn't get Best Picture or Best Director nod, but it was nominated for 3 Oscars.
Right?
Screenplay. Burt Reynolds, kind of like the movie briefly revived his career.
One
like,
of his best roles.
Yeah, one of his best roles, and he was nominated for an Academy Award. Julianne Moore was nominated for an Oscar for that film, and it just kind of like opened up. It gave him a lot of legitimacy, a lot of control. And this is at a time in the '90s when he had all these great directors like Tarantino or Fincher or Soderbergh or Rodriguez or Kevin Smith making these crazy, unique movies, and Anderson was part of that group.
Yeah, he got put in that group now.
Yeah,
you
like
know,
it's like
legit. They're like finally people see that there's a genius behind to it.
There's a really great genius, and you know when you hear genius, a lot of people are going to want offers, and that leads to.
So it was a success.
It was a success, yeah, and
mostly critical. I
think box office it made its money back.
Yeah.
I got a profit, I think, and even on the VHS sales, it got profits from there. But it was still a success, and then Anderson recalled a story about meeting Francis Ford Coppola for the first time, and Coppola said to him, after Boogie Nights came out, Coppola said to him, "You're at a position in your life right now which you're never going to be ever again, when you're going to get the chance to make whatever film you want to make. I suggest whatever it is, go for it.
Do your most personal film.
Do your most biggest movie." And while he was editing Boogie Nights, his father, Ernie Anderson, sadly had passed away from cancer. And even his friend Bob Ridgely, who played the Colonel in Boogie Nights, died shortly after too.
Yeah, so he lost a lot of people that were really close to him.
Yeah, it sounded like he talked about that period of writing Magnolia as a very intense,
dark
period of his life.
Yeah.
So is that what Magnolia is about?
Yeah. So like,
I don't know if that's what Magnolia is about.
But you can tell it deals with a lot of stuff, and I think he even talked a little bit about that in that podcast about stuff he was feeling at the time. And what happened was Boogie Nights was his big success. Mike DeLuca said, "What do you want to do next?" It's a thing every director wants to hear. Instead of like, "Here's what we want you to do," it's more like what do you want to do?
Here are your offers.
What do you have
it's
in
like,
mind?
no, what do you... Yeah.
What do you want to do? We'll do it, whatever you want. And Anderson, at first, wanted to do a very small movie. He just said, I want to do a small movie. I just massive film with Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
I want to do a small drama, 30 days of filming with my friends. That's it.
Right.
So he sat down, he started writing Magnolia, and the script just blossomed into this massive, like 190-page screenplay with like 9 main characters, as far as you would get from doing a small leveled movie. But they went for it. He started recruiting a lot of the cast from Boogie Nights, with the exception of Marky Mark and Burt Reynolds. But a lot of them.
I mean, that comes from them not meshing real well in Boogie Nights. I mean, maybe not Marky Mark because he was kind of like blowing up.
He was out there.
But Burt Reynolds, definitely him and
Anderson
didn't really get along.
Yeah, it was just a case. I heard Anderson wanted to cast him at Magnolia at one point.
But it's, and he said it's not that he was, it's just he was kind of a difficult guy, especially when he was the biggest star in the world.
In the 70s, yeah.
And then he came and he had to share trailers in this movie,
right?
In Boogie Nights. So it went from being, again, like the characters in Boogie Nights, the biggest thing in the world, to being knocked down and
just like what happened.
Yeah, a guy who needed this resurgence,
right?
And
did he end up getting any star power for Magnolia?
For Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of the actors in the movie. I mean, it's funny because
he got Tom Cruise.
Yeah, he got Cruise in the movie. The thing I like about Magnolia is that you have all these great actors, but they're all like character actors, respected actors, unknown actors. Like like veteran actors, people who have been doing it for years, and the one who ends up stealing the show is the movie star. It's Tom Cruise, who's magnificent
isn't
in the
there
movie.
A story that Tom Cruise was like, well, I'm playing with all these people that are so good that he's gonna have to step his game way the fuck up.
I'm guessing that's probably what happened because he's looking at the talent and he's like, the story goes about Cruise got involved was that Tom Cruise was making Eyes Wide Shut with Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
Around the time Boogie Nights had come out. And Kubrick saw Boogie Nights with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and they all loved it. And Cruise was like, oh my God, when he sees talent, he wants to immediately work with them. And Anderson was in London at the time, and he came to the set of Eyes Wide Shut and actually met Stanley Kubrick.
Wow.
Which was a big moment at that point. It's like, you're meeting the master.
Anybody.
And in fact, they asked him how it was like meeting Kubrick, and he said Kubrick has a very small crew on his movies. He just goes like, "What am I doing wrong?" Yeah. But Cruise loved,
and I think Cruise, he played opposite type.
Right.
He was way more bigger and bravado, flamboyant almost, which he's usually low key and focused.
Well, it's funny you say low key because in Eyes Wide Shut, he played a very repressed character, and I guess in a weird way he wanted to look for a character that was larger than life.
I don't think he gets to do that larger than life again till like Tropic Thunder.
Probably, yeah. I guess it was
where
Tropic Thunder.
He plays that crazy over the top
turn into 11.
Yeah,
turn into 11 essentially, and Cruise liked Anderson.
Yeah,
Cruise. Oh yeah, Cruise liked Anderson, and he said, "Whatever you do next, I want to be involved." Anderson sat down and wrote Magnolia and wrote a part for Cruise and everybody else who worked on Boogie Nights. And the story goes is that the movie, I think, costs somewhere between 30 to 40 million. And it was a very big movie. There's a documentary online called That Moment, which is from the Magnolia DVD. A very interesting documentary which shows the making of Magnolia. You see Anderson from when he had finished the screenplay to the production meetings to getting everybody together, and it was a massive, massive shoot. I think it took from January of 1999 till June of 99 to do filming.
Half a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, half a year, and then who knows how long editing took if they started editing the movie while filming.
I mean,
because it came out at the end of the year, 99.
Right, and he says, like, if he had another chance at it, he'd completely cut it down because the movie's runtime is about like 3
hours and 8 minutes, I think, was the movie's runtime.
It's a long movie.
It's a very long movie. But again, it was in a position of power. I mean, here's the thing about Magnolia that I like. It's like you're in this position of power. You're given final cut.
Yeah.
You're allowed to do any script you want.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you... It's just to see that bravo, to be like, you know what, I'm going to make this very intensely... You can tell that film's intensely personal to him.
Yeah. I mean...
Like, who would not want to say, I want to do this as your golden ticket movie?
I mean, it's extremely personal. I mean, I think he has a lot of him and his dad. He has a lot of stuff with religion. He has a lot of the rise and fall of kid actors.
Or even another theme in his movie, which will become a big theme of his next film, is the theme of love. And it's because a lot of his movies have these intense love of characters, or the characters are in love with each other. Whether it's a parent, son, daughter, or even a lovers. That like it is a very. It's funny when I think about it now because I actually remember the first time I saw Magnolia. I was in middle school. That was the first Paul Thomas Anderson film I've ever saw.
Yeah,
and I still remember seeing that movie, like where I was when I saw it, and I was just blown. It was a movie that there's movies when you see it the first time, like, oh, I forgot when I first saw that, but then there's movies where like I remember where I was when I saw it, and it was this roller coaster of emotion. It's the fact that they let him make that movie at that age, and that movie in particular make it 3 hours long. He was 29 when he made this film. 28,
so he still hasn't hit 30.
No. Yeah, this was kind of like the movie he made before his 30s. And the fact that it was that big of a movie that New Line even said, we're going to let him make this movie, it's just amazing because it would be tough to get a film like that made nowadays. You have to have some special clout.
Nearly impossible.
You have to have some special clout to get a film like that
and
made.
not just that, like, while you're watching
why do you guys
movie,
say that?
Oh, it's a 3-hour movie. There's some stars. It's
a movie that deals with life, death.
It's life, death, and the third act, something on it. I mean,
insanely weird happens in the third act.
It starts raining frogs. I mean,
which is one of those things where, and especially in today's logic-minded, world, the internet,
like everything
everybody
that's
would be
based
like,
on
why is
reality.
that? Why is that? Why is it raining frog? And it's like that's not the point of why. It's the fact that it happened. That's one of the themes of that movie. Is the fact that random things happen. There's this great opening sequence in the movie where you see these three storylines, which are only mentioned at the very end of the film and never really brought up to the rest of the movie. You get the idea that those three storylines set up what's going to come.
I mean, the stories within those stories, those first three stories are amazing.
Right.
And then you follow. I mean, because the whole movie's supposed to take place in
in
the valley in these few blocks. It's really close to each other.
Like Magnolia, the story is the day in the life of 9 main characters in the San Fernando Valley. As all this intense, as their lives interconnect and all these intense, strange, tragic things occur as they all try to find some meaning in their lives. It's essentially a really massive character drama.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how Boogie Nights was more of a comedy drama. This movie's more straight drama.
Straight drama.
It's a straight. I mean, it had maybe some little bits of humor here and
humor
there,
in it,
but it's like this roller coaster of emotion.
Dude,
but there's
one
something.
Minute you're crying, the other minute you're cheering for someone, but then again something tragic happens and you're like, oh my god. At the end of it, you feel drained because you've gone through so many feelings.
So much feelings, and it's what was great about the movie is that you feel like you're glad you've gone through that.
Yeah.
You feel like you're glad you've gone through that kind of experience and it's sad that they don't do films like that often anymore because I think...
So it's like a cleansing process.
It is like a cleansing process because again, it was a time when films like strange off, because this came out in 1999. You had other great films like Fight Club and The Matrix and Boys Don't Cry and Being John Malkovich and The Virgin Suicides coming out. These magnificent films by these great directors, and Magnolia was one of those movies that came out during that wave of just like, wow, these are filmmakers at their prime making these great films and whatnot. And I think one day honestly,
was it critically acclaimed?
It was extremely critically acclaimed. Magnolia,
Tom Cruise got nominated.
Tom Cruise got nominated for an Academy Award.
Did he?
What was that?
Did he?
Did he get a writing award?
Oh yeah, Anderson got an Oscar nod for screenplay, and Amy Mann, who sang the song "Save Me," which in fact Amy Mann was one of the inspirations for Magnolia. Her music inspired him a lot. In fact, the line in Magnolia that goes, "Now that I met you, can you never see me ever again?" came from one of her songs. But yeah, it was nominated.
A lot of also inspirations come from his then girlfriend Fiona Apple.
Fiona Apple. You can tell she had even though her music's not in that movie, you can sense her inspiration in that movie because it has that kind of jazzy.
He also directs a lot of her music
videos.
Some of her music, which we'll get to some other time about directors.
About music videos. There's a great video that he did of hers that I really like a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was this massive movie, and it came out at a time when movies are coming out. I personally think, they may not make a movie like that now, but I think there'll be a time where that will happen again.
I think there'll be a resurgence.
There'll be a resurgence. I don't think
after all the superheroes are said and done, after everything's been glossed over, I feel like people are gonna want to feel again.
They don't want to have emotional movies again.
Yeah, and when it is, it's an artsy movie, man. It's an art movie.
It's an art movie,
film.
but it's a really great art film.
Right, for sure. And one of the things he said, he's like, you know what? Everybody thinks I'm this like artsy guy and I take myself too serious. He's like, you know what? Yeah, I have a collection of films and I have the Stanley Kubricks. I have all these artsy movies.
Mm-hmm. They love Hollywood movies too.
But what I love and I rewatch and all it are Adam Sandler movies. Or The Waterboy, he said was one of his favorite movies.
Yeah, he has a love for Sandler and comedy or SNL.
Yeah, and
actually, what I liked, a little interesting note is that at one point when Magnolia had came out, they asked him what actors he would have wanted to work with, and he mentioned he wanted to work with Chris Farley at one point.
Yeah,
which I thought would have been interesting. I'd like to have seen that collaboration.
Oh, for sure.
But Magnolia comes out, it becomes this critically acclaimed movie, but it wasn't so much of a box office success as
it was
Boogie
too
Nights.
long, I think.
I think a lot of people were turned off by the length, but now it's a film that people talk a lot about.
Yeah, it's one of those movies you watch on DVD or when it comes on TV and you're like
exactly
blown away.
When you have but I think people got scared off of the running time, but it got Anderson a lot more critical acclaim, and when Magnolia finished, he eventually met Adam Sandler, who was a fan of Boogie Nights and Magnolia and was impressed by his work.
He was a fan of, and he said...
And Anderson was a fan of his work, actually. And
he said that, like, having him, like, when he has those episodes of screaming, and because he screams in all his movies at some point, he said there's true emotion there.
There's raw emotion, like...
and
like, this is when Sandler had some legitimacy at the time. It wasn't as...
Well, he had some clout.
He had some clout. He wasn't as hated as he is now.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, he had some...
But then again, right now, he's not really taking those chances.
Not really. I mean,
what's his last serious movie? The Cobbler?
Yeah, that was
weird. But it's like a small, not like... I don't know.
It wasn't massively promoted the way Punch Drunk Love got massively
they promoted it a lot, but they probably promoted it as I remember seeing trailers thinking it was going to be a comedy.
And then just this weird...
It's
it's sort of a comedy, but... It's more of a
well, you just think it's a
drama.
comedy because it's Adam Sandler.
Yeah, like Punch Drunk Love, which was Anderson's next film after Magnolia, is essentially he described it as an art house Adam Sandler movie. It's this man Sandler
trying to find love,
trying to find love, like dealing with 7 overbearing sisters, and
it's
getting into
family,
this crazy.
It's about love. It's about being alone. It's about your place in the world.
Getting into this crazy. Punch Drunk Love. And it's funny because after Magnolia, he just said, "Now I really want to do a smaller movie."
Yeah, and that was definitely...
And that was very small. It's like 90 minutes.
Also located in the valley.
It was set in the valley. I mean, he didn't bring much of this... He brought some people, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Louis Guzman, he brought back.
Louis Guzman.
And it was Sandler and Emily Watson was the actress who played his love interest. And they're both fantastic.
Fucking beautiful.
I mean, what's great about... You talk about Adam Sandler not taking a lot of chances. I mean, you watch Punch Drunk Love, and a lot of people were just blown away. Like, holy shit. Because people at first were like, wait, the guy from The Waterboy and Billy Madison is going to star in a movie directed by a dude who directed Magnolia and Boogie Nights. Like, how's that going to work? It's such a weird...
Yeah, but you watch it and you're like, holy fuck, this guy can act.
Yeah, it really shows that Sandler, underneath all that kind of frat boy humor, has a range of an actor. It was really good, and you feel for his character, because his character in that film is extremely unstable. Like, just a lot of it has gone through so much shit in his life.
And he has some of my favorite scenes are where he loses his shit and just punches shit out.
The bathroom scene.
The bathroom scene.
In fact, in that bathroom scene, if you ever listen to the audio sounds rough because I think the mic was kind of getting damaged or something. Yeah. And they used that rough track in the final cut.
Man, I also love Louis Guzman. I don't know why. Every time he uses him, I just like Louis Guzman. I like him as a character actor.
He uses him to really great effect. I loved his bit in Magnolia.
But Philip Seymour Hoffman.
And he plays the villain in that movie.
He plays the villain, and the way they humiliate him when he calls the sex phone line,
mm-hmm.
the way they treat him, and he shows up to the house. He's like, "I'm in love, and you don't know what kind of damage I can do to you."
Right.
That's fucking powerful. You've never seen Adam Sandler act like that before, and I don't think you've seen him get to that level of acting since.
No,
I don't know, because he has that Netflix deal. I hope at least some of those movies he takes serious and he doesn't just do
frat boy humor
the stuff he's been doing.
Yeah.
I mean, which probably everything leads me to believe he will. But if he does half of those serious and half of those comedies, I mean, he doesn't have to take the risks. He's Adam Sandler. People still watch him. I mean, like Howard Stern, whether they hate you or they like you, they're going to tune in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing with Adam. Like, I mean, Pixels ain't shit, but that's regardless of the point.
Right.
Punch Drunk Love
is an amazing movie.
Amazing, beautiful movie.
It is a very...
It is his most low-key movie.
It's very low-key, and there's just a sense it's just kind of like a... It almost... I actually think, to me, Punch Drunk Love felt more like an art film than Magnolia did.
Right.
Because there's such a
I mean, the colors he chooses...
Yeah, he got this artist who sadly passed away a few years ago named Jeremy Blake, who did those weird color art stuff in the movie, which are magnificent. They really fit the mood.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, actually, it's funny. It's a romantic comedy too, and it's one of my favorite romantic comedies, and one of the best moments of that movie.
Uh-huh.
And I would say is one of the most romantic moments of that movie is the sequence where he decides to go go out to Hawaii, and you hear that great song "He Needs Me" by Shelley Duvall from Popeye, a reference to Robert Altman.
Right.
And we should also talk about Altman's inspiration on Anderson, because Altman had a massive inspiration. I mean, Magnolia was almost Altman-esque with the ensemble casting, the way they used dialogue and sound in that movie. It felt Altman-esque, and I liked how you used that nod in Punch Drunk Love.
I mean, one of my favorite gags from the movie is the whole pudding thing, and the way he racks up miles and he'll never have to buy tickets.
That was one of the inspirations for how he got the idea. He read a story about an actual guy who did that, and that became an inspiration for Punch Drunk Love.
Okay.
But it is such a strange movie, and it did get a lot of good reviews. He actually won the Best Director award at the Cannes Film Festival, but the movie didn't really, like Magnolia, didn't do well at the box office either. Right. And even with Adam Sandler as your lead guy, I think people were just...
I felt like that was faulty advertisement.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, it's an art movie that gets pushed as a comedy, and when people get there, that's not what they get. They get upset.
The same thing happened with Boogie Nights, actually. Boogie Nights was promoted to be this kind of like quirky comedy, and then they see it has comedy, but it's also a dark drama, and people are like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And but it's still a film that a lot of people like a lot, though, of Anderson.
And you see his progression as a director, as a writer, as a filmmaker.
It's one of the first films where he actually focuses on one character. I mean, he kind of did that in Signe, but you also have the other supporting characters. Yeah. But you do see a progression on that one, and it is kind of experimental too. I mean, the way he photographed. I mean, he has a great visual style. We should just mention his photography style is amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I mean,
I think we should move on.
Yeah. So people who were fans of Anderson had to wait for a long time. I mean, he was gone for 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, he took a break?
He took a break. Like, he was out. People were just kind of waiting, like, hoping when is he ever going to come back.
In a big bad way.
But he does come back. I mean, he does come back, and he comes back with a vengeance. And, of course, it leads up to his movie, which many consider his masterpiece.
His best
There Will Be Blood.
That's the one he wins for, right?
But Daniel Day-Lewis won the Oscar, and we talked about that briefly on the last podcast.
Yeah.
Daniel Day-Lewis won Best Actor, and his cinematographer Robert Elswit.
So he hasn't won.
He hasn't won an Oscar yet. Can you believe that?
For writing or directing.
Directing, man.
That's crazy.
The man should get an Oscar.
Yeah,
seriously, he should get an Oscar.
I think he will eventually.
But you know what? Even if he doesn't get an Oscar, who cares? He's still an awesome director.
Yeah.
But no, There Will Be Blood started. The movie is essentially about this oil prospector played by Daniel Day-Lewis, who's becomes wealthy and grows an empire, but internally becomes more and more of a bastard, and how it affects the relationship.
I mean, it's also the rise and fall, except that guy kept rising, but he kept losing everybody close to him.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of like Citizen Kane in that sense. Or even years later, Social Network did the same theme.
Yeah.
Yet you make more money and you become
more isolated from the world.
More isolated from the world as you're becoming more wealthy. You're wealthy on the outside, but you're bankrupt on the inside. I think is the best way of describing that movie.
So essentially, the more financially successful he gets, the more emotionally he starts lacking.
Right.
So it's a trade-off.
Right. And the movie started out as an adaptation of an Upton Sinclair novel called Oil that Anderson found at an airport one day. And he started reading it, and he was kind of playing with the idea, like, maybe I should try adapting this.
Yeah.
And he was working on a screenplay about two warring families, which was going nowhere. So he used a lot of those elements and just started creating There Will Be Blood. And even though it kind of uses the book as a jumping off point, it's not really a true adaptation. It just is a partial adaptation.
Right.
And much of it he created himself.
Yeah.
And he had wanted for years to work with Daniel Day-Lewis. In fact, he had sent Lewis an incompleted version of the script just to see if he'd say yes. And Lewis had loved Punch Drunk Love, and he said, yeah, I'll do it. And it was a smart career move because he wins an Oscar for that movie.
Yeah.
But the film, it was hard to finance, though. The reason why he actually worked on it a couple years after Punch Drunk Love, and the reason why it was so long until it came out was because they took 2 years to look for the money.
Yeah, he had stopped working. He hadn't had a big financial success. The industry was changing.
Yeah, so
they weren't financing those type of movies.
No,
it was hard for him to get that money.
It was really hard, but he just kept to his guns. It's amazing that he actually just kept.
I mean, the cinematography in that movie is fucking.
Oh yeah,
it's
funny because of that movie. I mean, talking about the emotional intensity of like Boogie Nights,
right,
Magnolia, and Punch Drunk Love. There Will Be Blood. His most restraint. It's very controlled, very just like.
But don't you think that has to do a lot with the main character?
It does have to do with the main character, and I thought it works because his films always reflect his character's, state of mind and
State of
whatnot.
mind.
Like, you look at Hard 8, it's a very stylish movie, and it's very smooth, much like the main character of that film is. You look at Boogie Nights, it's flamboyant. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing for the first half, and it turns into hell for the second half. And then you watch...
And it's the state of mind that the character is going through.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, referencing the directors who inspired him, you can tell that the director who inspired him on this one is clearly Kubrick.
Yeah.
Because it has that Kubrickian control towards it. It is very controlled. It focuses on a very villainous character as his lead.
Right.
And it's just an amazing movie. It's a masterwork. And in fact, that was the first film where he got nominated Best Director.
Yeah.
At the Oscars, but
didn't win.
No, he went up against No Country for Old Men, but that's a tough call.
That is a tough call.
It's like honestly, the way I look at it is that both movies are amazing.
Amazing.
So it's like 1A and 1B.
Yeah, they're both, and it's funny. They both have a very. I mean, is that you guys think? Do you think those movies have a very apocalyptic vibe about them?
I wouldn't say apocalyptic, but it's it's men with no soul. Like they don't have that right or wrong.
Right.
They just go about living their lives the way they want to.
Because they both have a wasteland feel too.
They're very empty frames, if that's what you're talking about.
Well, even the setting, like they're all set in wastelands.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I think that's why I thought apocalyptic, because they feel almost like the world's disintegrating around.
Because
them.
it's them against the world, really.
Yeah, yeah, but man, There Will Be Blood. I mean, if you want to talk about a movie that is a real, even at the end of the decade, people talked about that movie and put it up on like best of decades list.
It's world class.
It's just it feels like I don't know. I always feel like I think in a way Anderson. If Magnolia was like where he reached like an emotional height, There Will Be Blood where he reached a more thematic height. Real like.
And I think with The Master,
right?
Now there I don't know where his inspiration came from. I mean, I thought he was. I mean, the movie deals with Scientology and the maker of Scientology and Hubbard.
L. Ron Hubbard, yeah.
L. Ron.
Well, there's an interesting story about The Master. He had announced a project back in 2009, and I remember when it first announced, because I was like, when's Paul Thomas Anderson going to make another movie now? It's like, and how are you going to follow up There Will Be Blood?
Exactly.
And he announced The Master, and I got super excited, like, oh my God, he's coming back for another movie. This is 2009. The Master didn't come out until 2012 because it was set up at Universal, and he wanted to make the film for like $35 million.
Yeah.
And they're just like, no. And it was like...
And Joaquin Phoenix had fallen from grace.
Well,
from Hollywood.
Joaquin Phoenix wasn't his first choice. I think originally his first choice was Jeremy Renner from The Hurt Locker. And he went off to do Mission Impossible 4, and then he went for Joaquin Phoenix as the...
He was the second man up.
The second man up. And Joaquin Phoenix is amazing in that movie. I mean...
and I think...
Is that why to work with him again in his next movie?
Yeah, I think probably why.
They became friends.
And that movie, I mean, the Master, for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's about this unstable war vet from World War II who meets a cult leader and their relationship and how it grows and whatnot.
Again, a lot of the themes he's touched upon a father-son relationship.
It is, yeah, there's
like
a father-son relationship. And also destructive characters.
And destructive characters, people that would completely bomb their life,
Right. And I think that search of meaning, too, is a big part of that movie, as it is of all his movies. These characters trying to find some meaning in their lives and whatnot.
Like, what's the meaning of life, really?
Like, what's their place in the universe?
And, I mean, if that's not art, I mean, most art is what's the meaning of life?
Yeah, like...
why are we here?
I remember when I saw that movie on Netflix, and I was blown away by the filmmaking craft. It just expertly well done.
Acting, everything's like superb level.
And, that movie got funding from Megan Elliston, who's known for funding all these, like, strange art house type movies. She did Zero Dark 30, American Hustle, her, and, Anderson. She backed Anderson. It was great that she backed him, and she was also the one that backed him on his next movie, Inherent Vice. Now, I actually have not seen Inherent Vice yet. Right. That's the only movie of his I've yet to see, but I will get to see it.
I've watched it.
How was it?
It was confusing, to say the least. good movie though. Thematically, great acting, shot beautifully. Everything you'd expect in a Paul Thomas Anderson film.
All right.
He said he adapted the book, and I think he said he had like 300 pages.
Right. Yeah, and he had like 300 pages
he
or something.
To, like the person that helps him.
Tried to ask his sister, who was like, "Is this from that podcast you mentioned?"
Exactly.
He asked his sister, who always reads his stuff, to go over, and when he brought this 300-page brick of pages,
she looked at it. She didn't even read it. She's like, "No, cut it down."
Cut it down, and that's when he knew he had to cut it down.
Like, yeah,
300 pages.
Yeah, 300. He writes a lot. I mean, I remember talking earlier about Boogie Nights being like 300 pages when it first started.
Yeah, and
isn't that like 5 hours worth of stuff?
It probably is.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that was his most recent
one. The thing
one.
about it is that the writer Pynchon, he's
Thomas Pynchon, yeah.
He's kind of a conspiracy writer, the 60s hippie movement.
Right.
The man versus
the state.
State versus man. And, you know, it's also a noir. It's all these genres combined.
It's like a
and
comedy
I think
movie.
It's a good movie. It just imagine if The Big Lebowski, instead of Lebowski being high on weed, is on acid.
So it's like Fear and Loathing meets Big Lebowski.
Oh, wow.
Nice pulls. Yes. It's this guy trying to figure out something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd say the meaning of life by all these strange occurrences. And it's hard to follow. Honestly, when I watched it, the first watch, at the end of it, I followed. I saw, like, okay, there's strings that there's storylines I follow all the way through. Like, okay, this guy's lost. He's found now. Stuff like that. But as far as the end of the movie, there was no feeling like that I felt like we went through something and they put us through the ringer. Like in his past movies, there's no like, oh, there's a love story. There is all that stuff, but there's so much things. And that's just because the novel is so complex. There's so many twists and turns and U-turns and fucking loop-de-loops.
Well, it was the first Pynchon novel, to my understanding, that
ever been adapted.
Yeah,
and most filmmakers who've ever tried to adapt one, they all tell you Pynchon's fucking unadaptable.
Right.
It's not doable. And I mean, he did a great job. I honestly, at the end of it, I still, like, to this day, I don't really... I mean, I'd have to rewatch it and maybe I'll get something out of it. Mm-hmm. It's not a bad movie at all. It's more like...
Do you think it's more of a cult film?
I think it'll develop as a cult film for sure. I feel like 10 years from now, we'll catch up to whatever the hell he was trying to say and do.
Maybe it could be one of those movies that's like ahead of its time.
It's totally ahead of its time.
Because the book has a following, right?
The book Pynchon has a following. I mean,
I'm sure like
huge writer.
Fans of Anderson and Pynchon must
love it. And maybe I need to write. If I read the novel, I'd probably come with a better understanding of what the film's about.
I mean, he got nominated for an Oscar for that movie too. He got nominated for screenplay, actually.
But still hasn't won.
Still hasn't won.
And he will win.
I mean, like I said,
hopefully.
like even if he doesn't win, he's still a master director.
He's still a master director.
Like, I mean, look at Hitchcock, look at Kubrick. They haven't won an Oscars and they're considered the masters. So, like, I don't think Anderson has anything to worry about.
No.
But yeah, like, and before we start wrapping up, two of the quick things. One is what he's going to be doing next. From the sounds of things, he's doing a movie with Robert Downey Jr.
He's adapting a Pinocchio.
A Pinocchio. I don't know if he's directing or if he's just simply writing it.
Pinocchio.
Okay. Do you ever see Anderson doing like a superhero movie or like a big budget movie?
No.
Like he once said that he likes those kind of movies a lot.
I think he enjoys them, but I don't know if he has one in him.
Right. That'd be interesting though. And then he's doing a documentary on Johnny Greenwood, who's his composer on his last few films, from There Will Be Blood, Master, and Inherent Vice. That'd be pretty cool.
Place for Radiohead.
Yeah, for Radiohead. I love Radiohead. They're awesome.
Yeah.
But they're great. But like before we wrap it up, what are your guys' thoughts on Anderson overall as a filmmaker?
Here's my take. If anybody could remake, or not remake, but could get a movie as close to Citizen Kane as possible. I mean, of course, not off the bat or anything,
right? But
as socially relevant and as powerful and as important as Citizen Kane is till today, I think he's going to be one of that. He's going to be the guy to do it.
Right.
Just because of how masterful he is at such a young age. I mean, as far as time goes, like he's only gotten a better understanding of the world and of human nature, and I feel like that, and with his creative writing and the way he writes, I feel like he could make a movie that really, lasted time,
right,
forever.
I've only seen Boogie Nights, Punch Drunk Love, and There Will Be Blood, and out of those three, I like his films. I think he does grasp the human condition very well. I think he has a pretty good understanding of psychology and how people think, because I think he understands the good part of people and the bad part.
For sure.
So that's what I take from him.
I mean, for me, it's like we're all inspiring filmmakers, and I think everybody who I met who wants to go into making movies, when I always ask them who are among their inspirations, the name I keep popping up over and over is Paul Thomas Anderson. And I think to our generation, he's like what Scorsese was to his generation, or even like what Orson Welles was to Scorsese's generation, like this master class filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I watch his movies and just being amazed that he started at such a young age and is making quality work, is one of the few filmmakers out there who's making quality work and making the films that he wants to make. It is not trying to be like, I got to make a, he's making what he wants.
He definitely doesn't work for the system.
No, he doesn't work for the system, and I'm glad he doesn't. And I just can't wait to see what he does next. He's such an amazing filmmaker, and he's one of my favorite directors. And when I first got interested in film, he was one of the first directors I looked at. He's still one of my top 5 favorite directors.
For sure.
Do you think he's still growing as a director?
I think I think somewhere there'll probably be a bigger movie than There Will Be Blood or Magnolia.
Yeah, and I think every director till their last movie, I think they all grow and take something from the last one they made.
Right.
And he's still growing, so that's what I'm saying. Like, he's done so much in so little time. I mean, I wonder what he's going to do next.
Like Hard Eight came out almost 20 years ago, and it's like amazing, like what he's gotten done within less than 20 years.
And most of his movies are so rewatchable. Like, you could watch his first movie, even his short, and they're so good now. They're not dated at all, and that's something a lot of people don't have.
There's passion in his movies.
Yeah,
there's
passion.
Truthfulness. Yeah, and I mean, I think to me the best filmmaker is the one where it's passion put into them and whatnot. But yeah, like hopefully there'll be another Anderson movie.
Our Paul Thomas Anderson history review.
Yeah, we're gonna do more.
To our film historian.
We're gonna do more stuff on directors. Like on a director one, we'll do one maybe on Spielberg, one about Scorsese and
for sure.
Cameron, all these great filmmakers.
It's just a guy we all love and admire, and hopefully you guys could check his movie out if you haven't. That's gonna be Film History Reissued for you guys. And just connect with us on social networks. Let us know what you like, what you dislike, and we'll definitely keep in touch with you guys. I'm Nestor.
I'm Diego.
Juan.
And this has been Film History Reissued. Thank you guys for listening.
I'm a fucking idiot. I'm a fucking idiot.